Hello and welcome to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. This is your host for today, Kate Carter.
I'm Kylie Caldwell.
And I'm Holly Spear.
And okay, ladies, well, I'm going to be talking about a case today, and I totally thought you guys had heard of this one until I asked them before we started recording because it's a recent case. And I thought maybe you would have recognized it. I don't know. I think maybe the more I go into detail, you might be like, "Oh, I remember this case." But
So far, we've let you down.
So far, you've let me down. And I'm going to throw a little curveball too because this case is unsolved.
Wait,
Yeah.
woo! She's
Okay.
growing.
I never cover
Expanding your
these because
horizons.
they frustrate the crap out of me, but this is a story. So buckle up. So today I'm going to cover this case that desperately needs to be talked about. And it was in the media right when it first came out, but the case is being super close to being solved, or at least that's how I feel and probably how you guys will feel too once I go into all the details. But it's a type of story that it really just takes one person to come forward with needed information or just one person to recognize the suspect. So really you just need someone to step forward with info. And when this murder first happened, it was in the news. People were in complete shock. There was a huge break in this case when police were able to link DNA from the crime scene, but the police still haven't been able to identify who the person was. So, with all of that being said, I'm going to be covering the story of the unsolved murder of Rachel Morin. Rachel Morin was born in Dover, New Hampshire on May 20th, 1986, to her parents, Patty and Zach. Rachel was one of six children, and she came from a pretty close knit family. And even though she was born in New Hampshire, she spent the majority of her life living in a town called Bel Air, Maryland. Now, Bel Air, unlike the town in California, it was a pretty small town in Maryland. It had only about 11,000 people. So everybody knows everybody, kind of, sort of. Rachel was known for being a really happy and outgoing girl. She was gorgeous. She modeled. She was really into the fitness world. And she would often be found traveling around the world in her free time. So when Rachel was in high school, she began dating this guy who was a classmate, and his name was Matthew. And when she was 19 years old, the two of them ended up having a daughter together, and her name was Faye. But due to the harsh realities of being so young and parents, the two of them ended up splitting eventually. But by the time was Rachel was 30, so within 11 years, she ended up having five children. Those kids ranged from ages 8 to 18. The oldest father was Rachel's high school boyfriend, Matthew, but the other children came from two different men. So she had three baby daddies, and obviously, just as it is in society, Rachel ended up suffering a lot of scrutiny from having more than one baby daddy. But that didn't stop her from loving her life and her children. She was known to be an amazing mom and would do anything for her kids.
She's beautiful, by the way. In the picture that Kate has put on here, one of them she has obviously has her makeup done, a filter on, but then another one she has no makeup, no filter, and she's just absolutely naturally beautiful.
Yeah, you wouldn't guess. So in this story, she's almost 40, and you
Oh
wouldn't
wow.
guess from those pictures that she was 40.
Definitely not.
No. So in her early 30s, Rachel began dating a man named Richard John Tobin, and they Facebook announced their relationship on August 1st, 2023. So our story is going to be in 2023, which was last year. So while she was dating Richard, things seemed to be going well for Rachel. She owned her own cleaning business. She had a great relationship with her children, and she was quickly falling in love with her new boyfriend. But people in Rachel's life were a little uneasy about her new boyfriend, Richard. So let's talk about him for a second. Richard was born in October of 1995, so he was almost 10 years younger than Rachel. When Richard was in his early 20s, he began to have run ins with the law and was known to heavily use drugs. So by the age of 25, Richard had been arrested and charged multiple times for drug use, domestic violence, assault on an officer, being a fugitive from justice, resisting arrest, and public disorderly intoxication. You
I
know,
can see why people in her life would throw up some red flags.
yeah. So That being said, September 2023, Richard ended up receiving a suspended sentence in his probation, which was right about the time that him and Rachel met and began dating. So, right now in this story, Richard is 27, Rachel is 37. Once Richard met Rachel, he ended up cleaning himself up. He began working as an electrician, and he claimed that he was sober for over a year. So Rachel just saw something in Richard that she loved, and she wasn't too bothered about what others were going to say around their relationship. So August 1st is when it was posted on Facebook that they were in a relationship. And you guys know Facebook official is legit. So 4 days later, we're on August 5th, 2023. Around 2 p.m., Rachel left her house in Bel Air and made her way to a tanning salon that she was a regular at. After the tanning salon, allegedly, Rachel went to go visit Richard, and the two of them hung out together until Richard dropped Rachel back off at her house around 5 p.m. I say allegedly because obviously it's like hearsay. You know, there's no proof that they hung out, but Richard said they did. So Richard went to the gym after dropping Rachel off, and an hour later, around 6 p.m., Rachel left her house to go for a walk on the Ma Pa Heritage Trail, which was in her town. This trail was a well-known landmark in Bel Air. It's a path that people could walk on that used to be an old train track line. And the trail was overall around 6 miles long, but the part of the trail that was in Bel Air is only 3 miles. And it stops at like this bypass before connecting it to the other half of the trail, which is outside of the town. And like I said before, this trail was well known. It was often a place that people visited and went for walks. It was kind of busy 24/7. So there were always people walking on this trail. It wasn't like secluded. As the evening went by, Rachel still hadn't returned home. And after Richard returned home from the gym, he tried calling Rachel a few times to get her ETA, but wasn't able to reach her. After a few hours, Richard got nervous about Rachel being out in the dark and decided to call the police around 11:23 p.m. Which, okay, I just have to say, if I'm going for a walk and I leave at 6 p.m. and it gets dark and I'm not home, call the cops. Don't wait until almost midnight. I find that just to be a little weird that you're going to wait till midnight to call the cops.
Maybe he didn't think she was still out there. I don't know. Maybe he just figured, okay, she got home. She's busy. Okay, now it's midnight. No word. I don't know if she got home from.
He's at her house waiting.
Oh.
Yeah. He went to, so they had two separate residences, but Richard often stayed with Rachel at her house.
Okay,
so he went to the gym, went back to her house. He knew that she left at 6 p.m. He went back to the house after the gym, and it wasn't until 11:23 p.m. that he called the cops.
Yeah. It's late.
Yeah. Just, ladies, if I ever go out and it's dark and I'm saying I'm going for a walk on a trail, okay, call the cops.
Will do.
Will do.
So, just as a side note, on this specific day, because Rachel's entire family lives in Bel Air, on this specific day, Rachel's family is not in town because they were in Kentucky visiting family members for a funeral. So when Rachel's mom, Patty, got the call that Rachel was missing, she obviously was like in an immediate heartbreak. After Richard called the police and reported her missing, he decided to go out and try to find Rachel himself. Okay, so the reports here I did read, it was a few different things. So I'm not completely sure of the timeline, but either on August 5th, which is the night that Rachel went missing, or the morning of August 6th, Richard ended up finding Rachel's car. This car was parked at the entry point for the Ma Pa Trail, and obviously Richard called the police right away, and they came out to search Rachel's car for evidence. Because we know Richard called the cops at 11:23, if he went out right away to go find her and found her car because he knew where she was walking, I assume he found the car after midnight, so like the morning of. But it also is weird that the cops didn't find it first. Just a little side note.
Well, and also I wonder if he went to the car
first,
walked down the trail, like walked in the area she was walking. Yeah. Then when he couldn't find her, called the police maybe.
Yeah. So as the hours passed by and there was no word or evidence from Rachel, the Hartford County Sheriff's Office decided to notify the public that they were seeking help in finding Rachel, a potential missing person. The police said that Rachel had last been seen around 6 p.m. the night before. She was around 5'2" and 107 pounds. Rachel had blonde hair, blue eyes, and was wearing a dark-colored tank top, black spandex shorts, and gray sneakers. And obviously, because the town was so small, word about Rachel's disappearance spread very quickly, and many of the locals decided that they were going to help in trying to locate Rachel. It was around 1 p.m. on Sunday, August 6th, that police were called to a drainage tunnel near the bypass on the Maupaw Trail. A man named Michael had called police to alert them of a woman's body he had found while searching the area with his daughter. Michael was a former National Park search and rescue officer, and he later told police that he just had a feeling when he heard about Rachel's disappearance on the trail that the tunnels would be the first place he would have searched. According to the report, Michael and his daughter had been on the trail for about an hour searching for Rachel when they discovered a naked female body that was lying in a pool of blood. Michael stated that the woman's face had been severely beaten and it was at the point of being unrecognizable. Located by the body was a large rock covered in blood and a long trail of blood on the ground, which made it look like the female body had been dragged. Once police arrived to the scene, they announced to the public that a woman's body had been found and that the woman had been a victim of extreme violence. But because the body was so brutally mutilated, the police weren't able to make it official ID until a forensics test was done.
So, they found her body in the drainage ditch?
By that bypass. So you remember how I said the trail 6 miles long, but half of it's in Bel Air. Then there's a bypass, and then there's the other half. So she was by the bypass.
It seems kind of strange that he would go straight to the drainage ditch. If you remember my case that I did, one of the first cases I did, Ebby Stepik, where she was found in a drainage ditch like years later because no one ever checked.
Just saying.
Also unsolved.
Yeah. Where was she located? Maryland? I can't remember.
Arkansas.
Little Rock.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
From what I do remember about this case, that I do remember the guy who found her body being a little sketch and weird.
Yep.
I'm sure you'll get into it. Okay.
Yep. So with that being said, the night of August 6th, the sheriff's office decided to inform the public that they believed the body, in fact, was that of Rachel Morens, and that the investigation into her disappearance was now going to be a homicide investigation. A day later, on Monday, August 7th, the forensics test came back and confirmed that the body was indeed Rachel's. The forensics did do an autopsy on her, but the details around what was to be discovered was never released to the public, and literally still hasn't over a year later. Like, we don't know technically what caused her death or if there's sexual assault or whatnot. Now the investigation begins, and obviously the media picked up on the story pretty quickly. And the first thought of the public was that it wasn't Rachel's criminal boyfriend, Richard, but actually Michael, the man that found Rachel's body. It seems like Michael had no problem in finding Rachel's body hidden in a tunnel, yet the police had been searching that exact area for hours prior to its discovery. Another weird thing is that Michael stated the reason he was out searching for Rachel was because his daughter was one of Rachel's close friends. But it was quickly pointed out that the two girls didn't even know each other. So, like, why lie about that? Michael even went on to say publicly that he believed Rachel was probably murdered by someone she knew due to the state of her body and how much violence had occurred to her. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's quite normal for a murderer to try to insert themselves into the investigations or stories. So obviously this gave the public a big old red flag on Michael. So second theory from the public, which we also get a lot, was Rachel's new boyfriend, Richard. It didn't help that Richard had a criminal past, but more so that his criminal past included domestic violence, assault, and violation of protection orders. So obviously that was not a good look for him, but the police ultimately were able to clear all of Rachel's exes and ex-boyfriends. At some point, the police opened up a tip line for Rachel's case. So if anyone had any information or thought they did, they would call this number and report it to the police. And within 10 days of Rachel's murder, the police ended up getting around 300 tips on this phone line. Unfortunately, not a single one of them ended up panning out. But the police did catch a big break, because foreign DNA that was found on the crime scene was actually matched in the FBI's CODIS system. Now, for those who don't know, the CODIS system, CODIS, stands for Combined DNA Index System, which is basically a computer software system that the FBI has put together in its local, state, and national databases of DNA profiles that come from convicted offenders, unsolved crime scene evidences, and missing persons. So basically, it's a big giant system for DNA that's found from crimes or criminals. This match happened on August 17th, which was 12 days after Rachel's body had been found. The DNA evidence that was found at Rachel's crime scene had come back to a match tied to a home invasion and assault of a young girl in LA. So this assault had happened 5 months prior to Rachel's murder in March of 2023. But the suspect from that LA case had yet to be identified. So because this DNA was a match to what was found at Rachel's crime scene, the police were able to use any evidence from the LA case as well. So basically, to make it more simple, there was evidence found at Rachel's scene. They put it in the database. It came up as a match to another crime scene across the entire country. Rachel's in Maryland. The other DNA was in California. And some of that evidence from the LA case happened to be a Ring doorbell camera footage. Listeners, there's not any audio with this video, so I'm going to describe it to you. This video is an 8-second clip of a Ring doorbell camera, and it's of a shirtless man exiting the house in LA. You can't see his face because he's turned away from the camera the entire time, but you can see kind of a slight side profile of him and his very, very obvious haircut because it's awful. He has either black or brown hair. He's wearing a gold chain necklace and gray sweatpants. Based on the analysis of this video, police believed that this man was around 5'9", 160 pounds, and of a Hispanic descent. And just to remind you, this footage is from LA from a case in March 2023. They found evidence, DNA evidence, in this house. It happened during a home invasion and assault. And I just want to say for everyone who ends up watching this video and has any information of the suspect, you can call detectives on their tip line as well, which we'll put. And I do want to say, because ladies, you've watched the video, if you look closely at this video, you can also see an arm reach out and close the door behind the guy. So obviously there was someone in the house who closed the door behind him. But I also find it weird that this dude left through the front door. First of all, why is he shirtless? Don't understand. I also think he's barefoot. I couldn't really tell in the video. But if it was a home invasion and an assault, this dude just casually strolls out of the front door. And then
it almost looks like someone hands him something out of the door.
Right. And then the door closed. Like you can visibly see a hand closing the door.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people dissect this in like the arm and just casually. It's like you're just telling a friend goodbye, see you later.
Yeah. Right. It was very casual.
Agree.
I wonder if the term home invasion, it just sounds worse than what actually happened. Like maybe that's just the legal term. Like he didn't burst through the front door or like climb in through a window. Maybe he just wasn't legally allowed on the premises. That's why it's called a home invasion. It's my guess.
Good guess, Kylie.
Good guess. So not to mention, because we don't have a lot of evidence on this case because they haven't solved it, but the police also in LA haven't released any more information. They've only released the doorbell footage. That being said, they were able to figure out whose arm that was in the video closing the front door of the house. And police ended up talking to that person. Okay, so before I get into this next details, I do want to say a lot of conflicting reports. It's just more of hearsay from here, you know, because the police never released anything stated in newspapers or the media. This is more of just hearsay. But one of the things that the police did release is that they identified whose arm that was closing the door in the video. They spoke to this person and that this person had nothing to do with the assault that occurred at the house. Reports on this case do say that the person who was assaulted at this residence was a minor female. And so I also think that that's why a lot of information probably wasn't released to the public, because this case involved a minor, which we know is a big thing. Another thing that really doesn't make sense is that if the police were able to identify the person closing the door, how could that person not identify the man leaving the house? But according to the police, the person inside the house was not able to identify the man. So there's that. So let me get into this LA case for a second. On March 26, 2023, there was a minor female alone inside of her home in LA, California. This minor said that during the evening, at some point, she was confronted by a strange man in her house. This man was about 5'9", Hispanic, muscular, and had just broken into the house, though we don't know by what method or how. When the man found the young female in the house, he then assaulted her. Due to the female's age, we don't know anything about what type of assault it was. But after the man assaulted the girl, he left through the front door of the house where he's caught on the doorbell camera. The camera footage shows this man without a shirt on, gray sweatpants, potentially barefoot. He had dark hair and a haircut that some people thought maybe was military styled, which, just throwing this out there, my 2 cents, it's absolutely not military styled, but that's like the first guess that some people went to. But this footage really didn't go viral in the media until after Rachel Morin's murder back on the East Coast. To this day, in August, not a single person has been able to identify this man from the LA home footage. At some point, the LA Police Department was able to collect DNA evidence of this man, put it into the system, and that's how the Hartford County Sheriff's Office was able to get a match on their end. But the LAPD was never able to make an arrest on their end. So, something I do think about this case is potentially because they said a minor was involved. Now, I'm just throwing this out there because I don't think it ever gets talked about in general. What if this minor was having this guy come over to her house? What if it was a boyfriend she wasn't supposed to have? Or what if it was an older dude she was meeting up with and like somehow her parents found out about it, maybe through the Ring doorbell footage. And they were like, absolutely not. She's a minor. We're calling the cops. This guy came into our house, a home invasion. He broke into our house and he assaulted her because maybe they did something. You know, maybe it was like a relationship she wasn't supposed to have.
Well, then I wonder why, one, they wouldn't identify him. Two, I mean, we don't know how old this girl
What
is.
if the parents didn't know who it was?
But I'm saying, like, if this girl, if she's an older minor, like a teenager or something, this assault happens, parents report it or whatever, and she's going through all these like interviews and testing, she wouldn't just say she knows who this guy
Would
is.
she get him in trouble? Obviously, this sounds awful because I'm just making assumptions. I have no idea. But in my head, I was kind of thinking maybe that's the case. Because how could she not identify him? That's where I don't understand.
I'm caught up on the person who let him out of the house, who one can't identify him to, and did it casually. Like,
I think that's the minor closing the door.
But they said it was someone not involved.
She wasn't helping the assaulter. I don't know. This is it's tricky.
You're saying that it was not consensual because she was a minor, but it might have been somebody that she was meeting up with.
Right.
It's legally an assault, but
right. If he's over the age of 18 and she isn't, the parents easily could have been like, okay, well, we're calling the cops. I mean, I feel like I know people who've done that before, you know?
Okay, counterpoint, especially since the Rachel Morin case. If they go back, I feel like they would have looked through the LA victims' social media and text messages if she had invited someone over to try and nail this guy, especially after a murder.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. When the police in Maryland ran the DNA found from Rachel's murder scene, it came back to this unsolved assault case back in LA, but there was no name or identification to this DNA sample. The Hartford County Sheriff's Office did publicly state that they believed whoever did this assault in LA was 100% the same man who killed Rachel in Maryland. And because there was video footage of the LA assault, the police back in Maryland were able to eliminate a lot of suspects that they had relating to Rachel's case just based off of the man in the video, you know, which is a pro, you know, it's not a con that they were able to do that. So one thing that really confuses people about these two cases is the fact that the man was able to commit both of these crimes within 6 months of each other, but on opposite sides of the country. Some people thought, okay, maybe this dude's a truck driver, and that's why he's easily traveling around coast to coast. And then another theory was that this man was in the military and that maybe he was stationed in California before being moved to the East Coast. So then another theory was that this man was potentially a serial killer. And from what we know about serial killers, they tend to jump around from all different places. But here we are over a year later, and there's still no new evidence found in either of these cases. Okay, so back to Rachel. Months after she was murdered, there was this local law firm in town who decided to help Rachel's family out pro bono. This law firm opened up their own tip lines in order to keep Rachel's case alive, and they even publicly announced a reward for any information that would be led to an arrest in Rachel's case. The law firm even created reward posters that they were able to spread out throughout both counties where Rachel was from and in LA where the young girl was assaulted. At some point, the father of Rachel's oldest daughter, Matthew, decided to work with a private criminal profile in order to make a profile of Rachel's killer. So this criminal profile said that they believed this man could be a violent criminal with a dangerous and psychopathic traits. The man was probably a narcissist that heavily lacked empathy, and that this man was most likely manipulative and a pathological liar. This profile went on to say that after this man committed the assault in LA, he most likely fled and went to Maryland to hide out. And that this man most likely knew someone in Maryland, and that's why he went there specifically. So people began to really believe that someone in the town of Bel Air knew who this man was. When Rachel passed away, she unfortunately had no life insurance. So that left her 5 kids in kind of a tough position. So Rachel's sister, Rebecca, started a GoFundMe page asking for $60K to help cover the costs of Rachel's funeral and other stuff. And that's when a local pizza place in town also decided to raise a fundraiser and raise money for Rachel's children for Christmas, the same year that Rachel was killed. This pizza store fundraiser ended up raising around $7K, and they handed that money over to the law firm that was working for Rachel's family. Okay, this is where things get a little odd. But at some point, Matthew, Rachel's first baby daddy, went public about the fact that the GoFundMe page originally stated that the $60K was going to go towards Rachel's funeral costs, and then the remaining money was going to go towards Rachel's 5 children. But after the page reached a certain amount of money, the wording of the page changed and ended up excluding Rachel's oldest daughter, who was Matt's daughter. And it replaced Rachel's daughter's name with her sister's name, Rebecca, who's the one that started the GoFundMe.
Oh, shady.
You putting this together? So like Rebecca, Rachel's sister, started this GoFundMe page, and she's like, we're going to raise money for the funeral and to help her kids out. Well, Rebecca raised enough money where she decided to change what was written on the GoFundMe and put herself in the names that was going to receive the money. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense. Matthew also said that the Morin family ended up not giving Rachel's children any Christmas gifts, despite the local pizzeria raising $7K for that exact reason. To date, none of Rachel's children have received any of the money. Raising almost $67,000, Rachel is still buried in an unmarked grave.
Oh, shitty.
What's the law firm doing about that?
Well, here we go. When the local law firm who represents the Morin family was contacted, they stated that the money from the pizza fundraiser was placed into a trust for the children and that they were never told about the money being used for Christmas gifts. When the law firm was asked how the children were going to be able to get access to that money, the lead attorney at the firm, his name is Randolph Rice, stated that the children were going to have to write letters to the law firm requesting the money and providing evidence that they needed the money for something related to health, wellness, or education. Attorneys, give me your 2 cents.
I mean, for trust funds, kind of normal to have parameters like that and guidelines, but Rachel didn't appoint the attorneys to have control over that.
Yeah.
Her family, and also the pizzeria didn't raise the money for that either.
I mean, it seems a little overreaching. I wouldn't do it I wouldn't expect to see that as an attorney, but I don't think it's
out of question
necessarily terrible yet without any other facts, but
Yeah. I just don't think an 8-year-old is going to know to write a law firm to get help financially.
Well, and also if you think about it, an 8-year-old might use that money on like Fortnite. So I can see them saying like, let's wait till you get older. You're old enough to justify why you need the $1,000. Tell us what you're using it for. I could see that.
Yeah. Okay. So anyways, August 19th, 2023, hundreds of people ended up gathering together at the Maupaw Trail to do an honorary walk for Rachel. During this walk, people spread flowers throughout the entire trail and put up posters of Rachel on the trees. On August 27th, the Morin family had a public celebration of life for Rachel at the Greater Grace World Outreach Church, which is the church that Rachel often attended. Not long after Rachel was murdered on August 5th, 2023, the Hartford County began planning to install a security system along the trail. Supposedly, this system is going to cover around 2 miles of the trail and will focus mostly on secluded areas and entry points. The security system has already been named the Rachel system. So, ladies, 3 weeks ago, an arrest was made in this case.
Oh,
Surprise.
So I might have lied to you guys.
so you didn't do an unsolved. I take everything back that I say about you growing and expanding. You're a basic bitch still.
3 weeks ago, on what would have been Rachel's 38th birthday, police received a tip that gave them a lead in the case. They were able to then use this lead and use genetic genealogy to identify a suspect. The suspect is 23-year-old Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez. Victor is a citizen of El Salvador and was arrested at a bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Victor had been living illegally in the U.S. since February of 2023 and actually was a prime suspect in a murder case back in El Salvador. Thought that after Victor committed this murder back in his home country, he ended up fleeing to the U.S. 1 month later, after he fled, Victor ended up attacking that young girl in her home in California, and then he fled. And 5 months later, he brutally murdered Rachel in Maryland. Originally, when the police were able to track down Victor and found him sitting at a bar in Oklahoma, they arrested him on a trespassing charge. This was so that they could get him to a police station to investigate more and gather more evidence. At some point, they were able to run his information, and it came back with a DNA match. Currently, Victor is being held for extradition from Oklahoma to Maryland. When he will get to Maryland, he will then be formally charged with Rachel's murder and will eventually go on trial. But since this occurred 3 weeks ago, we really don't have any update. Usually these extraditions can take months, sometimes years, for all the legal process to go through. So unfortunately, right now, that is the end of our case. We don't have any more updates for Rachel Morin, but we are very happy that a suspect was caught and is being charged.
How long did it remain unsolved before they matched his DNA?
A year?
A year, almost to the... Yeah.
Okay.
But what blew my mind, even when you look at the guy, first of all, when you see the dude, not really who I thought was in the footage, the doorbell camera. Like, he just kind of looked, but also it could just be the whole hair thing that throws me for a loop.
It looks like the same body, like the same build to me, and the same kind of hair. It's longer in the picture, but
for sure.
I wonder how many murders he's committed in El Salvador.
I know. And I want to know more about the El Salvador murder as well. That was just one of the first things that popped up was like, oh my God. Okay, first of all, illegal immigrant, not good. But the fact that he fled his home country because he was being persecuted for a murder already.
Might just be a psychopath, like they thought.
Yeah, sounds
so
like...
He's the same guy in the Ring doorbell, but that victim he let live. I just wonder why his motive has changed from attacking some random girl in the middle of the woods or whatever to entering somebody's house and then walking out the front door so casually. Seems odd to me, but
that's why I really feel like he probably knew the minor in California.
Counterpoint, I'm gonna fight you on this one, Kate, still.
Really? Okay, go ahead.
All in good fun.
Respectfully, I disagree. Well, you know how like some sexual predators, they have certain things that get them off. Maybe if the LA victim was younger, wasn't really putting up a fight, he didn't really care that much. Like Rachel is an older woman, she's in shape, she's gonna fight back. He kind of wanted to kill her. Maybe that's what it was. You know what I mean?
I mean, maybe he's just a sexual predator and Rachel fought back and the other victim didn't.
Yeah. Like, you remember like Israel Keys, he had the one girl who, while he was attacking her, she kept complimenting him like, oh, we can like go on a date. Like, she was trying to like sweet talk him out of it, and he didn't kill her.
Yeah.
There's a couple instances of that happening.
The LA case throws me for a loop. Like, we don't know. There's no evidence that he broke into the house.
That we know of.
That we know of. But nothing's been released. I mean, wouldn't you think they'd be like, oh, he went through the window? Or like he went through the front door when he left the house and somebody escorted him out through the front door.
Maybe that person just found them in the house. I don't know. Didn't know the assault happened, or was just like, get the out of my house.
Like a parent. I don't know. I'm just a little suspicious.
And I mean, he could have known them. Like, he could have known that their front door was going to be unlocked. He could have known that there was going to be a girl in the house that was alone. It didn't have to be consensual. It could have just been that he knew a target that he wanted to assault.
Yeah. Like he saw her earlier in the day and saw her go to the house and then saw the parents' cars leave or something like that. So he knew she was in the house by herself.
Could be, could be.
I just feel like I need more information about that LA case. And maybe it will come out, like we obviously just found out about who the suspect is, who's been arrested. So maybe more information will come out later this year once
Maybe.
everything goes to trial.
Yeah. The
Still
thing
in
is, once
line.
he gets extradited to Maryland, he'll have to go through the court process there and then wait to be extradited to California for that one.
Yeah, because I assume he'll do, since they're sending him to Maryland first, because that's the most recent and gruesome, he'll do all the stuff there. Assuming everything goes as it should, he'll get charged and who knows what kind of, because we also don't know what happened to her body. The police never released it. So depending on how, to what extent, I mean, obviously it sounds pretty bad, but he'll get life potentially. Crazy.
It's a good one. Good update.
So the guy that found her, nothing
Okay.
wrong
Nope.
with him.
Turns out he literally was a former search and rescue team for the National Park
Oh,
Service. So
God
like
bless him.
in the back of his head, he was like, "Oh, if someone's gone missing on a trail, the first place that as a former search and rescue officer, we would look in ditches and tunnels." And I'm like, that kind of I mean, it makes sense, don't get me wrong. He was out there for 1 hour. The police had been searching for hours.
He was in
Yeah.
every
Yeah, he was.
freaking news article. He was
Yeah.
talking about it nonstop.
Yeah.
Well, glad he found her though.
Yeah. So that's the case of Rachel Morin. Do you guys have anything for overtime?
This is a topic I feel very strongly about. If we had to give one state to Canada in order to accept Puerto Rico and keep our even 50, what state would you give to Canada? And its location doesn't matter. So it could be Oklahoma if you wanted.
So we need to have beef with one state. What is one state that you're like, get the F out?
Oh, I know exactly what I would say.
Ark.
Mississippi.
No, I'm just kidding.
Mississippi?
Arkansas is
Mississippi.
beautiful. Mississippi can go.
What did Mississippi do?
Well, first of all, they just suck. I hate to say that. We have listeners in Mississippi. I mean, I have family in Mississippi.
We're not saying the people suck. We're saying the state
No, I know. I'm
sucks.
just saying, like, I hate to say that about my family's state because I'm sure they like it there, I guess.
Okay,
I'm
well,
sure
you know
they
what?
would agree.
I'll go ahead and say it. We're all thinking about it. Kylie and I live here. Are we getting rid of Florida?
Florida was my first thought.
I mean, are we getting rid of Florida?
The only reason I wouldn't get rid of Florida is because of how beautiful some parts of it are. But y'all gotta admit, you're crazy AF.
Every single day, people almost hit me in their car. I mean, that's just one thing. Like
When I
every
read a
single
news
day.
story and I don't see the word Florida, I'm like, command F, it's somewhere here. This person's from Florida.
I mean, we literally have a segment called The Man in Florida. Like that is just a normal thing.
I don't think Canada would accept us. I think we're too much for Canada.
I agree with you. I don't know if they would. They'd be like, we don't want them.
We could easily give Canada like North Dakota,
Love North
no
Dakota.
problem.
Yep.
Have
Yeah.
you been there? Has anyone been there?
I know
Yeah,
people.
I've been to North Dakota.
It exists.
It's there. It's
No,
there,
you
trust me.
haven't, Holly. Have you really?
No, I really have.
Oh,
Another one that we might could give them is West Virginia.
I also was thinking West Virginia.
I'm fine with that. I have family
Yeah, I
there.
thought you might be.
They can go to Canada. I don't care.
Kylie, tell them your family there.
Family in West Virginia, Kylie?
Why do you think I'm the way that I am?
Tell them who. Our followers are probably gonna know. Pretty niche.
Oh, Kate, have you heard of the documentary called The Wonderful Whites of West Virginia?
Yes, I have. Are you related to some of the wonderful whites of West Virginia?
The Whites are my third cousins.
Okay. All right.
If you haven't seen it, you won't be hungry after you watch it, but it is a good watch.
Yeah, eat
Why
before
am I
you watch
not
it.
surprised? Like in a way, I'm not surprised. I'm sorry to all my family and friends that live in Florida, but I feel like we might need to banish Florida at some point.
Think of how beautiful Florida is, though. There's some really pretty places in Florida.
Holly, you don't live here.
Okay, but if you're trading Florida for Puerto Rico's not that different.
Why are we taking Puerto Rico?
Because we have to keep an even 50, keep the flag.
But why are we taking Puerto Rico? I don't want Puerto Rico.
Okay, rude to the Puerto Ricans.
It's the same as Florida, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're like half a state. Like they would be they're next in line. They're on the wait list. Should we just give them Alaska? Would that be easiest?
I mean, technically, I don't understand why Alaska is ours. It's not connected. It makes no sense. But it is pretty.
Yeah.
It is pretty.
I don't know. I think Mississippi's got to go. It's not pretty there. They rank lowest in everything. Unfortunately, if they do leave, Arkansas is probably going to tank their spot of the lowest ranking state. But I mean, I'd give them up in a heartbeat. It's hot. It's really hot there, humid.
What about like Arizona or New Mexico? You know what? Texas.
Arizona's pretty cool.
Let's just give them Texas. I feel like we're going to get a lot of hate for this one.
Oh, yeah, we are. If you have a different idea, tell us.
Okay, wait, I have another one. South Carolina.
Oh, you know what? As a North Carolinian, get rid of South Carolina.
It's the worst Carolina. They have nothing going on. The worst roads. I hate it.
Sorry, other than Charleston, what else? What else you got going on?
It's a state full of outlet malls and potholes. I'm over it.
And with that, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. For more information on our case, please visit us at our website at overmydeadpod.com and check us out on social medias at overmydeadpod. Tune in next week for another thrilling episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.